I read this story from Malcolm Gladwell, and I always thought it was very interesting, and I want to share it with you. So he analyzed two different demographic group that came to America about maybe 70 years ago. And so the first group came to America, and they were haberdashery. They made garments, and they were very poor, and they came to America, and they took whatever fabric they had, and they made aprons out of them, and then they sold it to women who needed apron, when they're cooking and stuff. They made a little bit of money selling apron, and then they started being a little bit more sophisticated by making dress in their kitchen. And then from there, they expanded on to making more, taking the dress into the store and selling it into the store. And then they expanded the operation by buying, button makers, fabric manufacturers, etc., because they wanted to make the dress at a wholesale value. And then from there, they started creating retail brands. And then from there, they started creating fashion line, etc. So that's one group. Now, obviously, I'm kind of shortening the story. Another group of immigrants came to America, and they work on a farm. So they learn how to pick like apples, and they learn how to pick strawberries. They learn how to pick raspberries, etc. Right? And what happens after 70 years, you look at their children. Now, the first group who started out making aprons, and from apron dress, from dress into bringing their clothes into the fabric store, from the fabric store into creating clothing at a wholesale, into buying, creating the fabric mill, etc. Their children were much more successful. They moved up on a higher economic scale than the second group of immigrants who came to America, and all they did was learn to pick different type of fruits and vegetations. Their kid did not go as far. Now, this is a very interesting story. I always look at business as lateral and vertical. Okay. So, sorry, horizontal and vertical. Okay. So what happened is the first group, they learned how to make the clothing, and they didn't just put it into consumers' hand. They knew how to create a brand. They brought it from the beginning to the end. Now, the second group, all they knew how to do was pick different type of fruits and vegetations, but they never saw the process of how it arrived at the consumer's hand. For example, you may pick apples. From there, the apples may be sold at a grocery store or made into applesauce, maybe put into jars, maybe put into tin cans. So what happened was the children of the first group got to see their parents think on a very vertical manner, like okay, how do we, instead of making 10 garments, how do we make 1,000? Obviously we thought we have to cut down on the margin as much as we can. So they end up buying a fabric mill, and then they started becoming more successful. So they created a fashion brand, etc. So the kids got to see the thought process, right? And because they were raised in that type of environment, they learned how to think from beginning to the end. Now, the second group of immigrants, their children did not get to see from beginning to end. They only saw the first level. So, why is this important? So, I sell books on eBay, but I don't just sell books on eBay. I try to figure out the process. Like, I'm building shelves. I'm trying to build an app to sell the books. And I'm trying to figure out different ways to place the books. I'm trying to eventually create my own turnkey innovation in selling books, etc. I'm less interested in trying to figure out how to sell as many books as I can on as many platforms. That is almost the equivalent of just learning how to pick apples and then strawberries and then raspberries, etc. I'm more interested in how did how do we make money picking the strawberry, how to make the strawberry into jams, how to can it, how to create a brand, etc. Now, there's pros and cons to each. The first method takes much longer and has a higher chance of failure because each step moving upward, you're encountering bigger hurdles and you are always learning and trying to figure out different ways to overcome those hurdles. The second method, you don't go as far, but you don't fail as much because all you're doing is taking the same skill set and reapplying it to something different. So, for example, you learn how to pick apples. Okay, it might take you a day to learn how to pick apples. Then 2-3 months later, you go learn how to pick strawberries. It might take you 2-3 days or a day to learn how to pick strawberries. Then a couple of months later, you go pick blueberries or etc. Right? Like whatever, it doesn't really matter. It might take you only a day. Now the first group is constantly innovating, constantly trying to figure out, okay, how do I buy a fabric mill? How do I run a fabric mill? How do I start a fashion line? How do I convince this department store to carry my clothing or the garments that I have designed and produced? And so the hurdle is much harder and you need more investment. You're constantly investing your time and money. The payoff may not come right away. There's a lot more stress. Anyways, guys, I apologize for making the story very short. I hope you got a lot out of it. Let's recap. You can learn to do something on a very horizontal level, or you can learn how to do something from a very vertical level. Now, the two difference is that the vertical level, you see the process or the service going from beginning all the way to the end, and you're constantly trying to expand on that. The second method is you just take your skill set and you just apply it across the board. You don't really care about taking it to the marketplace. You don't really care about innovating. All you care about is how do I do this job, and then how do I do another job that's similar to it. For example, there are people who only want to sell on different platforms. They're less concerned about creating a brand for their business or leveraging what they are selling or taking it to the marketplace. Instead, they just rely on these platforms. They just jump from platform to platforms. Like, I'm going to sell on Mercari, eBay, Etsy, etc. Okay, so that is very similar to, like, I'm just going to learn how to pick apples, strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, etc.